You're watching Tommy Talk with Izzy Miller on Tommy TV.
Hello, Tornado Nation. I am Izzy Miller with Tommy TV, and today I have Rocky Sickmann and Frank Kuchnicki with me, and we are discussing the importance of the Iranian Hostage Crisis and the Folds of Honor. So, Rocky, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and to get to know a background and who you are and what you do?
Sure. I came from a small town, Izzy, of Crockle, Missouri, close by to Washington, Missouri, which is about a town of 13,000. I grew up in a town of about 50, I always say, and that's dogs and cats included. But my parents taught me three things, Izzy: love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And little did I realize that those three things would really help me survive through my life. But I had two other brothers, two other sisters. My parents, we lived in a small 900 square foot home. And now we have this big house, but we always wonder how we made it back then. But it was a very close-knit family, and just remembered my past. And my past kept me alive through that 444 days of captivity.
So you're talking about your captivity. Can you please tell us about your experience in that, how you got there, and about the attempted rescue and then the release?
Sure. He started November 4th, 1979, after I had joined the Marine Corps. My father was in the Army. My brother was in the Army. I had to change the paradigm. I had to go in the Marine Corps. But I had served about 3 years prior, 3.5 years prior, in Asia, in Europe, and then joined the Marine Security Guard detachment and was assigned to the American Embassy in Iran. And at that time, there were 12 Marines that were detached to the American Embassy. And the Marines are really there, Izzy, to provide protection for inside the property. On the outside perimeter of the American Embassy, and there's over 200 of those around the world, that's where the host government provides protection. The Shah of Iran, the dictator of Iran, had just fled the country January of 1979. Fast forward October, he needed to come into the United States for medical treatment. I got there October 7th of 1979 to the American Embassy, and we had heard word that they were going to allow the Shah of Iran into the United States. And at that time, the radicals were very upset that we were going to allow this dictator into the country because they wanted him, that is the Shah, to return to Iran and stand trial. 2 weeks prior to November 4th, he arrives in the United States, November 4th. I had just gotten off guard duty, walked into the motor pool gate when all of a sudden my walkie-talkie had recall, turn around. And if you've ever seen the movie Izzy, Argo, the start of the movie Argo, it starts where there's a huge demonstration and they're coming over the walls. I will never forget that morning of November 4th when I looked at the front gate where we were supposed to have the Iranian guards at our location to help provide protection. There was no one there. I'll never forget that. Ran back to the American Embassy, the Chancery, got inside. It was a 23-acre compound. I was inside with about 30 other people. And at that time, there were 29,000 Americans as of January 1979. November 4th of 1979, there were 65 Americans in country. 30 of us got into the Chancery. That 23-acre compound, the other Americans were trying to get in to the Chancery. Once we closed that door, Izzy, nobody was going to get in, nobody was going to get out. So there, my colleagues that I had just seen earlier were immediately taken, blindfolded, bounded. We stand off. 7 Marines basically held off the country of Iran for the next 4 hours, waiting for the host government of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to come to provide protection. They never did come. Through the basement window, they break through the basement window, and who do they bring forward? The second thing I will never forget as long as I live is they bring Iranian women in black chadors, and they're using them as shields to push forward. Billy Gallegos and myself were in the basement, gas mask on, and here we had a sawed-off shotgun pointed at these women. And in 1979, Iranian women had no rights. They have no rights still to this day. But that morning of November 4th, 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the radicals, basically were using women to take the first shell if we were to have shot. Our orders were to stand down. We basically popped tear gas. We go upstairs. President Carter tells us to give ourselves up. And that started the next 444 days, known as the Iran Hostage Crisis, where we were tied to the first 30 days, not allowed to speak. And think about how difficult it is. Imagine sitting in that chair that you're sitting in right now. Your arms are tied to the arms of the chair and your feet are tied to the feet of the chair. And you're, unless it was your interrogation, were you allowed to speak in those first 30 days. So the only thing, Izzy, that you could do was go back to the wonderful times of growing up in a small town of Crockett, Missouri. And I went back as far as I could, sleigh riding down Aholds Hill, ice skating in Bestie's Pond, playing basketball in the old chain hoops at the St. Gertrude Parish. You name it, I thought of everything. I ate my mother's pancakes in that corner of that room. And just all those things kept me alive those first 30 days. Spent my first Thanksgiving, first Christmas. It was April 1980. Little did I realize, Izzy, that the United States attempted a rescue operation known as Desert One Operation Eagle Claw, where 8 individuals lost their life. We as hostages had no idea. We were locked in a room for the next, I told you, the first 30 days tied, the next 400 days. We were locked in a room. The room I'm in right now is about a 20 by 15. We were locked in that room for the next 400 days. To go to the restroom, you had to knock on the door and put a piece of paper underneath the door. If you knocked too loud, they tell you have to wait. Well, that day of April 25th, 1980, I'll never forget, the Iranians were running up and down the corridor. Something was happening. And so as a hostage, you analyzed everything. If you heard something, you analyzed it. If you smelled something, you analyzed it. And sure enough, that night, they came running into our room, blindfolded us. I was handcuffed to Billy Gallegos to the right, handcuffed to Jerry Plotkin to the left. They took us handcuffed, blindfolded from our room into a vehicle, drove us off to another location. We didn't know at that time, Izzy, that they had found the charred bodies of these Americans, along with a C-130 and a 53 and another CH-53 helicopter in the desert. So the Americans had gotten to the middle of the country of Iran, but because of equipment failure and there was a fire, obviously they aborted the rescue operation. And so the Iranians didn't know that. They thought that the United States were still trying to attempt to come in to rescue us. So they took all the hostages at that time and basically moved them around the country of Iran. It wasn't your typical move when you would drive from here to Destin, Florida. It was in a back, handcuffed, blindfolded, and not allowed to speak. And so anyway, months later, we came back. They put us into prison. We spent our next Thanksgiving, our second Thanksgiving, our second Christmas. We find out that the Shah of Iran had died in July 27th of 1980. We find out that Shah had died. And the whole reason why we were interrogated at the very beginning was if the Shah would come back, we would be released. Well, now all of a sudden the Shah is dead and we're still there. And so the Iranians at that time, when we confronted our guards, they said, we do not believe that the Shah is dead. They would not let us see the body. And so in turn, we remained there for the second Thanksgiving, second Christmas. It was January 20th, 1981, when all of a sudden they come into our room and they blindfold us, take us from the room, and they had taken our shoes from us in March of 1980 so that we could never escape. We had open plastic toed shoes. And so that night they took us from the room and they opened the door. And I mean, think about this. When you walk home tonight, you walk to your car to go home, think about as you're walking to the car that you got the opportunity to do that 7 times out of 444 days. So just the breath of fresh air and the cold temperature that night of January 20th, 1981, we walk out and I walk out and there's something I hadn't felt for 2 years, and it was snow. And the snow was running through my toes and my feet, and it was so cold, but it was such a joy. And the snow was hitting me in the face because it does snow in Iran. And I'm walking and I can remember the crunching of snow. They put me onto a vehicle. The vehicle drives off. It all of a sudden gets to a right-hand turn, and you hear this sound, a sound of an airplane that you had prayed for, you had cried for, you had hoped for, the sound of this plane. All of a sudden, the vehicle stops and they tell us to unblindfold. And I didn't have blindfold, or didn't have glasses, didn't have hearing aids then, but as you unblindfold, here you are looking at people that you hadn't seen in 444 days. And you look bad, you smell bad, and you're in shock. You don't know what's going on. They start taking one by one from the vehicle, put us onto an airplane. They start to close the airplane, and you start looking around. And you're saying, "Wait, we're missing people. Where's Gene? Where's Debbie? Where's Judy? Where's Kurt? There's other people missing." They said, "No, you're the last. The others were let go a year earlier." We had no idea that we were the last 52 of the other hostages, because you could not, and nor did you want to leave anybody behind in this situation. And they assured us, no, everybody was there. And it was, little did we realize, Izzy, that the United States had paid $8.3 billion to release us. The money arrived on January 17th. The Algerians, our mediators, they sat on that plane for 3 days waiting for us to be released. And the Islamic Republic of Iran, they told us in all of our interrogations, it is not you, the American people, we hate. It's your government, but we will use you to humiliate your country. And so sure enough, what they wanted to do, they waited. They turned, the airplane got to the end of the runway, and you've flown before. Right before you take off, you're sitting there and you're stopped, and all of a sudden the accelerator starts pumping and the plane starts shaking. Well, that night, all of a sudden, after 444 days of mock firing squads, Russian roulette, all the mind games that they played with us, Izzy, all of a sudden the plane's getting ready to they go down the runway and they turn off the runway lights. And the pilot comes on and he brings it back down to idle, and he says, they've turned the runway lights off. We're waiting for them. So, I mean, it's 444 days, morning, noon, and night. You don't know if you're going to live or die. And here they are to the last 20 minutes. They waited, making sure that President Carter left office and President Reagan came in. And the only thing they wanted to do was humiliate President Carter. And that's what they did. And the sad thing about it is they've done that for the last 42 years. But anyway, there's so many stories. I could be here and I could take up all the time, and I don't want to do that because we got a lot of other things. But that plane, as that plane, nobody was cheering on that airplane. Yeah, even though you were free, you were on the airplane with all your other buddies that you hadn't seen in 444 days. I only saw 2 other people, Billy and Jerry. I did see others for a short period of time, but that plane started going down the runway and it takes off, and everybody's thinking the same thing. It's like there's a bomb on this plane. This plane's not going to take off. All of a sudden, it basically taxis and heads towards Turkey. It was about 30 minutes later. All of a sudden, the pilot comes on and says, we have just crossed into Turkish airspace, and 2 fighters were escorting us. And we came unglued. The pair of pants I was wearing, I had worn for over 200 days. My left cheek was completely hanging out of it, but you didn't care. I mean, you knew at this point in time that you were freed after 444 days. And so, as we always say at Folds of Honor, freedom is not free. And at that point in time, after getting home, you start to find out the stories of these 8 brave individuals that gave their life for my life. And it's something that really, it goes so well with me as a therapeutic piece, Folds of Honor, that provides scholarships to families of fallen and disabled. And so every time I wake up in the morning, I think of those 8 individuals that never again would they have the opportunity to kick a soccer ball with their child, walk their daughter down the aisle, hold their grandkids. And those are things that I've been able to do in the past 40 years after coming home. So long story. Hopefully it wasn't too long, but there's so much more to talk about there, but that's the long, short version.
That is such an emotional story. Thank you for sharing that. And I can't even imagine, like it, I don't think as Americans, we have so much freedom, and I don't think we fathom how much, goes on so we can be free. So I can walk to my car safely every day after school. So I can sleep in my own bed and see my family every day. I think we really forget how fortunate we are. So I really hope that our audience takes this story and really thinks, the next veteran that they see. So when you came home, I'm sure it was almost difficult trying to get back to your daily routines and to adjust to being free. Can you please tell us about that experience?
Yes, it was, because for the last 444 days, you wanted to come home, and I can tell you the first 5 days were the I hardly ever slept. It was you just didn't want to, you didn't want to sit in your room. You wanted to get up and just move. And when I came home, it was very loud. There were so many people. And again, as I sat tied for the first 30 days, Izzy, 1979, I'm sitting there thinking of the Vietnam War that occurred, and ended around 1975. My brother was in during Vietnam. And so as I sat those first 30 days, I thought about the Vietnam veterans were spit on when they were coming home. And here I was in Iran thinking that they were spit on, and there were thousands and thousands of Vietnam veterans. Who's going to care about 60 people? Little did I realize when I came home, I mean, I met President Carter in my pajamas in Wiesbaden, Germany. We fly Air Force One back to DC. We meet President Reagan. And I mean, it was just a quite crazy. I wish I could go back and enjoy each minute of it, slow it down a little bit. But it was really, I wanted to get home to the family. You always want to remember where you came from. And like I said, those sights and those memories of growing up in a small town of Crockett, Missouri, I mean, they kept me alive. And so when I came home, I had my first press conference, and they said, Rocky, we're going to go across the street here from the airport, and we're going to go to the Marriott. And there's about 50 news reporters, and they want to have a press conference. And I looked at the guy and said, what's a press conference? I mean, what am I supposed to do? I mean, it was like thrown into this quicksand, and you had to try to get out of it. And so obviously it's really been interesting even to this day, to say the least, Izzy. I mean, it's my grandchildren now. Leela is 12 years old, and she's researched why she couldn't understand at around 9 and 10 why Papa was in prison, in this foreign country. She thought prison being a bad thing, but little did she understand the whole historical thing. As my daughter Hannah, she was in grade school in Southern Illinois. I was working with Budweiser at the time, and we had just moved down there, and we're sitting at the dinner table one night, as my parents used to always do, and they go around the table and say, what did you do today, Hannah? And right away, Hannah looked up at me and she goes, Daddy, will you come talk to my school? And I looked at my wife, and I looked back at Hannah. I said, Hannah, why would you want Daddy to come to your school? And she gets up, goes over to her little Catholic book bag, pulls out her book that had the old brown, bag. Back in the days, we used to wrap our books with like Kroger, bags. You flip them inside out, and that was your wrapper. And she opened up her little school book, and she goes to a page, and she says, because we're learning about you. There's a picture of me in the history book. You know when you're really old, when you're in the history. Your kids start to see all this stuff, but we had never told them about the story. So they learned it. And so it's just a very interesting piece. And to hear the stories of the 8 individuals that passed away, and not only those 8 individuals, but the other individuals that were on that rescue operation. I think Frank knows that a couple of weeks ago, I went down to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I met up with the guys that were on the operation. These guys had the guts to try, Izzy, to give their life to come over to regain our freedom. And you're right, you have no idea. As I was so young and naive, November 4th, 1979, I thought I was on top of the world. A great job, paid by the Marine Corps, paid by the State Department, traveling all over the world. But all of a sudden, one day, my life was stripped. And I mean, it was you lost your freedom, your dignity, and your pride. And all of a sudden coming back, it's like, how do you regain? And you never will forget about it. I mean, you wish that it could be zapped away, but I don't know if you've ever gone through a traumatic time in your life, or anybody viewing this has gone through a traumatic time. There's two ways that you can use it. You can let it sink in and destroy you, or the other way, it could you can use it as a stepping stone and really use it to move forward. And so my worst time is when they stripped us nude and put us up against the wall with three rifles. That was my worst time. And I'm thinking every time I have a difficult time, I think of that time. If I can go through that, I can go through anything. But anyway,
Yeah, it really shows how much of an impact it had on you now that you can remember all these specific details now to this day, and how much of an impact it had on your life, but also the way that you can share with your family what you went through. I think that's really special, telling them, firsthand why you had an appreciation more for your country, so they can learn a little bit from you. So you talked a little bit about the Folds of Honor a few minutes ago. Can you please just touch on that again and explain to our viewers what the Folds of Honor does for families?
absolutely. Folds of Honor is an organization that provides scholarships to families of fallen and disabled military. And I was a director of military sales for Budweiser in 2007. And all of a sudden, I'm working down St. Louis at the corporate office. One morning, I get a phone call from security, and they said, "Hey, there's this guy in the lobby in his flight uniform and wants to talk to somebody about a military program." Because being the director of military sales, you dealt with all military programs. I said, "Okay, I don't have a meeting." Went downstairs, and sure enough, here's this little skinny guy in a flight uniform. I'm thinking, man, he's got my attention. And so I go up, and his name was Major Rooney. They said, "Mr. Sickmann, I got this military program I'd like to share with you." And so, Budweiser's been around for over 100 years, and they've done so many different military programs. So we went in a room. He told me his story. I told him my story, and it was like synchronicity. We connected, but at that time, we didn't really do anything. It wasn't until that Budweiser and AB wholesalers around the country basically got involved. And since then, Izzy, I'm happy to say, as Frank, this chapter here, there's over 31 chapters now that have been spread around the country to help raise funds. But we've raised over $18 million from Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, and also AB wholesalers. And so the chapters continue to drive that attention, and over 29,000 scholarships. 41% of those recipients are minority. And the numbers continue to climb, and the more and more need is there. And again, for me, that need it goes back to those eight guys, those families. As a military, if you don't come back, and there have been many families that have their loved one not come back, and they get to knock on the door, and that family has to continue. So even if the loved one does come back and he's disabled, we help to try to provide that family, the wife and the children, education to help continue. The military individual is going to be helped by the VA, but the families themselves really don't have any ability for help, and that's where Folds of Honor stepped in.
And it's not only financial support, but also knowing that someone is there for them and they care about them too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really neat to hear the stories of these recipients after they've graduated, and they say, how Folds of Honor was there for them when they needed them the most. And so, but yeah, you're absolutely correct.
And those videos of their stories can be found on the Folds of Honor website, correct?
You're absolutely right. Yes, at foldsofhonor.org. There's videos, there are different locations, how to donate, how to create a golf marathon, you name it. And that's why we have chapters like Frank is doing another program next week, but their chapter is just a growing one. We have, an organization, Schnooks in St. Louis. They raised over $1 million in 1 month by doing a roundup program. There's so many different, programs. It's really exciting, but rewarding.
Yeah, I know that I took a moment to watch at least one of the videos. And I think if our audience would just go watch a couple of them, it would really show how Folds of Honor impacts other people's lives instead of, just seeing the statistics and learning about how much money is being given out to people that need the help, but also just seeing personally how that affects them as well.
Yeah, there's 29,000 stories out there, Izzy. And so you're absolutely right. If everybody was to look at each one of those stories, I mean, if you don't cry, there's something wrong with you.
Yes, I know they were very emotional, and just seeing the families coming together and being able to tell that story, but with some power beneath it because they know they have people backing them up. And also, I'm really curious myself, since you come from a background of a hometown, a small hometown, close knit family. I know I'm similar in that too. I know that you really appreciate your background as well. But what was the passion that you had? Where did it come from to really be in the military? Was it your family or what was it?
It definitely was. It was my father, my mother, my brother was in, but being from a small town, uh, growing up in Crockle at the Catholic school, I used to raise the flag every day. I was honored to be able to raise the flag. And then every American Legion parade there was in Washington, Missouri, my mother had us again carrying the flag. So it was a teaching of patriotism and really being behind it. And after seeing my father serving, my brother served, coming from a small town, I really did not know what I wanted to do in life. And so I was reading this New York Times magazine one Saturday, and sure enough, it caught my attention. Went into Union, Missouri, and joined the Marine Corps. And it just so happened that my wonderful wife, this young girl that waited for me for 444 days, we just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. And we went out to San Diego, where I was 45 years ago, where I joined the Marine Corps and got to go to the campus and see a graduation this past weekend. So it was
Well, congratulations on your 40 years, but that's really cool to kind of have that relate to you and how your background really influenced where you are now, but also got you through those really hard times of your life when you were held hostage.
Yeah, it was difficult, because when I came home, my girlfriend, now my wonderful wife, said, Rocky, either me or the military, you have to choose. So I've never forgotten about the Marine Corps, and being the director of military service. My wife did not want me to travel abroad and be in a location, as dangerous. Little did she know that being the director of military sales, you travel to all these bases all over the world. And so, but she gave me the opportunity to do all those programs. And so, yeah, she's very connected. She knows how important it is for me each and every day to continue to give back.
Well, because of your story, I know you've also gained some national attention. So can you share your experience of that?
National attention, I really don't see it like that. Although it is interesting. My wife this past weekend says, looking back at 40 years, we've done some very interesting things. Coming from a small town of 50, dogs and cats included, my son got to be in the movie Argo, which is an Academy Award-winning movie with Ben Affleck and George Clooney and John Goodman. And I got to speak to the cast of Argo. Just the people that I've been able to meet. I noticed in one of your questions was about the Heroes to the Heroes program, and those were programs I got to work on with Budweiser and meeting Dave Winfield. I mean, so many different people. But the unique thing for me is being able to help tell the story of not only what happened to me, but those 8 individuals and how freedom is not free. To you and work with chapters like the St. Louis chapter to really help continue to cultivate that and get people to understand that we go through life thinking that everything is perfect. But little do we know that there are military families, Izzy, that are currently right now wondering if their loved ones are going to come home from war. And if they do come home, is it, in a body bag, or are they disabled? So, whichever way, Folds of Honor is going to have their back to help provide them. Not going to bring back their loved one the way they were, but at least we'll help provide some support. But you never forget where you came from. And I'm still the little town kid from Crockle, Missouri. I go out there. My brothers still live out there. My sisters live out there, and I'll never forget where I come from.
Well, thank you very much, Rocky, for your story and for your time. I really enjoyed listening to it, and I'm sure our viewers did as well. So here we have Frank Kuchnicki. Rocky already hit a little bit about what the Folds of Honor is. So how did you get involved with this organization personally, become a secretary on the board?
It was a few years back. I worked for a company called Leidos. I'm a geographic information systems analyst. And we've been in this building for 20 years, and no one in the community knew what we did or who we were. So our building manager at the time tasked a couple of us to reach out to the community and veteran organizations to help spread the name and get us involved in the community somehow. So I did some research into a few organizations for the veterans, and one of them I read had just recently had some issues. So the second one that I came upon was Folds of Honor. Started reading about it and actually watched a few of their videos while I was at work, and had to stop watching them because I was crying at work because of some of the touching stories. So I reached out, and there was not a chapter in the St. Louis area at the time. So I reached out and talked with, I believe it was a representative from there. And about 2 weeks later, they put me in contact with a couple of other guys from St. Louis that were interested as well. And they connected us, and then a little bit time passed, and they had us flying out to Owasco, Oklahoma for a chapter orientation. And again, they gave us all the resources to be successful. And it's very hard when you're at this interview, or not interview, but orientation, and you're trying to eat lunch, and they have these family stories playing in the background, and you're trying to eat lunch while you're wiping your tears away. But it really hits home that, freedom isn't free. And a lot of us don't realize that we can do what we do because of the 1% of the population that chooses to serve our country. And like I said, it's just something that we decided to do. And like I said, here we are. This is I believe our second official year. And last year, I'm sorry, we provided over 155 scholarships to some St. Louis families, 22 which were qualified qualified students, but were not able to be funded because of lack of funds. So this year around Memorial Day, we launched our Operation 177, which was our goal was to fully fund the 155 that were already funded, but also to add the 22, making the 177, and get these scholarships funded because they were qualified. It was just the lack of funds. So our mission this year was 177. So that's what we're doing. And we should meet our goal. We should even surpass our goal.
So you guys have a couple goals now for this coming year, and it's a fairly new chapter. So do you have any future goals for how you'd like to build?
Obviously, we're here right now to spread the word. It's really helpful that we have great partners in the St. Louis area, such as Anheuser-Busch, as well as Quick Trip, which a lot of people see the Folds of Honor logo on the St. Louis Cardinal games right behind home plate. So that is a big help. So we're just here to help out. There's been many events already going on, and we're just happy to be the beneficiaries. And this year we finally started getting our own events going. As Rocky stated, I've got an event next week in Wednesday at a local restaurant where the chef has created a menu based on Anheuser-Busch beverages. So we're looking forward to that. That should be a good event. But yeah, like I said, we're here to spread the word, and next year will be even better, just for the fact that all the pandemic stuff is starting to hopefully die down a little bit, but especially with the vaccinations back out. But we'll see how that goes.
And also reading your bio, I noticed that you're part of the American Corporate Partners, or ACP.
Yes. That was another thing through work. Leidos partnered with American Corporate Partners, which is it's a mentorship. What we did was veterans that were coming out of the military ready for civilian life again. What we did was we helped them get into the workforce. So what we did was we looked at resumes, talked to them about what kind of career paths they would like, if they were wanting to go back to school, introduce them to any kind of person that might be affiliated with a certain field of work, to help them get their foot in the door. And we've been doing this for, I believe it's been 4 years now. And you get paired with one veteran per year, and then you switch in hopes of that by the time you're done, they've either been placed in a career or they know what they're ready to do, and they go and pursue it themselves. But you keep in touch with people because they have more questions, and you just want to find out, how they're doing.
Well, that's really amazing. You work with a company that helps, students and families, but you're also helping veterans as well. And you get to see both sides of that. So I know in your bio, you said that you haven't been in the military. So what increased your passion for helping families and veterans?
My father, my stepfather, and my grandfathers were all in the military. I'm actually a first generation American. My grandfathers served for the Mexican Army and the Polish National Army, and my fathers both, one served in the Air Force and the other in the Army. And what really touched home was my grandfather from the Polish Army, captured during World War II and was placed in a concentration camp. And just hearing some of the stories that he could tell, he never got too far into too much detail as we were young, but also it was painful for him. And one thing that I still take out of it is that, because he was in the concentration camp, is that I can remember being at their house and them having 4 deep freezes full of food. My grandpa was never going to go without food again. And to this day, it's funny because I still laugh about it, but I have 3 freezers at my house, and they're stocked full of food. And it's just something that are passed along, but they love their country. They love what they did. And I love my country. I didn't have the courage to sign up when I was younger. And when you get older, you regret it. And this is my way to pay back their service to me.
Yeah, and you're also carrying on their legacy by sharing their stories and helping other veterans and families in need. And I think that's an amazing way that you can give back. Can you please tell us how all of this relates to Taylorville, Illinois? Because you've been talking about the Folds of Honor and the Iranian Hostage Crisis. Can you just tie it all into why this matters for Taylorville?
Well, my wife is from Taylorville. She graduated, I believe, in '98. So her and Coach Lee Mateer were, I think he might have been a year older, but they've known each other in, I believe it was their last high school reunion. I was talking about it with him, and we had just started the chapter, and he was all in, and he loved, as you know, Coach, he loves the country, he loves his students, and he thought, what a better way to show support than try to get a military night for the high school, because you guys have a great community. We come up there probably at least once a month. And I love getting out there. I love seeing my wife's friends all in the area, but the community is a strong, close-knit community, and they are very veteran-oriented. They love their military. They love America. And Lee thought he wanted to do this, and I told him I think it'd be a great opportunity. And here we are. Next Friday, we'll be at the game. My wife and I we should have a tent up. We'll be selling some T-shirts. Right now, there is a raffle going on for a Kevin Harvick autographed door panel from the 2014 Sonoma race. Not quite sure where the tickets are, but they're somewhere up in Taylorville. You'd have to talk to Coach. He knows more about that than I. I'm not sure about the business. But yeah, it's a great thing. Like I said, Taylorville is a great community. I know everybody will come out and support.
I'm really excited for the game. I'm in the band, so I'm excited to see all the atmosphere and see all the people that come in to watch the football game, to come together as a community. I actually have only lived in Taylorville for ongoing 4 years now, and I came here when I came to high school, and I've noticed how welcoming the community is and how they support each other through COVID and even the tornado that came through our town a few years ago. It's just such an amazing community, and I'm really excited we get to do this for our veterans, and I hope to see you at the game. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
Not off the top of my head. All I can do is thank you very much for this interview. Like I said, I can't wait to see the game. It's going to be a great game. I hope the Taylorville pulls it off. I know Lee's excited about the game. Like I said, my wife and I will be there at a tent. We'll be raffling off the door panel at halftime, I believe. And it's going to be a fun time. Like I said, it's there. It's a great night. Let's celebrate the military, but more importantly, let's celebrate the community coming out and supporting this event.
Yeah, Izzy, I can't thank you enough for really, as Frank was saying, the education, giving us the platform to not only communicate Folds of Honor, but really how freedom is not free and how that American flag, it represents so much. And so, and hopefully if anybody was in doubt or had never heard of Folds of Honor, hopefully they're going to be able to learn more from the event that you're putting on right here. And as Frank said, those nights at the football game, I was a captain my senior year, and those were things that kept me alive. And so your days in high school, they never go away. You'll always remember them. So it is neat to be in a small town atmosphere. So I salute you and thanks again. Thanks, Frank, for allowing me to be part of the program.
Thank you, Rocky, for your service. Thank you, Frank, for joining us. Thank you both for speaking for us today. And for Tommy TV, I'm Izzy Miller.